Let's call the meeting to order. Jackson, could you do roll call, please?
Chair Kelly,
Here.
Vice Chair Harmon. Here. Board Member Ruppel,
Here.
Board Member Fan,
Here.
Board Member Zero. Board Member Zero, I do have you as an attendee. I will allow you to talk for roll call.
He's still on mute.
Yeah, he's muted.
You're on mute. Dang.
I have given him,
Oh, there we go.
There he goes.
Dane, you there?
Oh, bummer. Could type it in.
Are you muted?
So say our audio is on.
I am
Yep.
That's a bummer.
All right, we almost have a full quorum or a full board to this one, so. All right, Dayton, we're gonna keep going. So do we have a quorum? Okay, great. Let's go to item number 2 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the June 11th meeting. That seems like such a long time ago. I mean, I was reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was before the quilt show, the rodeo.
The smoke.
Yeah, the smoke. So are there any exceptions or comments to be made on the minutes from last meeting? Did I get a, no,
Motion to approve?
we have a motion approved. Can I get a second?
Well, I'll second. I wasn't here for it, but sure, they looked good.
All in favor?
I,
Motion-
Aye.
Yay, Zane's there. Okay, great. Let's move on to visitor communications. Is that Jackson, anything?
we do not have anything.
Okay, then let's get into the board business today. Paul, do you want to jump in and talk about that?
Joe Vestman, our contract, traffic engineer. And works, or he owns Transite Consulting out of Bend. He's been with the city for several years, has helped us out on a couple of transportation plan updates, as well as various projects around town. And anytime we have a request to look at an intersection, either for improvements, vehicular accommodation improvements, or signage, striping, those type of things, we run it through Joe first, make sure it's warranted. This intersection in question that was brought to us by you all at the time, Joe has looked at a few times for us, and he can debrief on those earlier evaluations and obviously his current evaluation. And with that, we're happy to have him out, and we'll turn it over to Joe.
Well, can I ask one question to start with?
Shoot.
What is the cost of a study like this? What does it cost the city to do this?
It's hourly.
$1,800
rate is
or
pretty
so?
minimal.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. Is there a time that I have, Paul, so I'm not speaking too long on this?
You're the only agenda item, so.
Well, perfect.
Knock yourself out.
Well, yeah, I've been asked to look at this a couple times. So Pine and Hood, we've got a north-south road that has no stop signs and an east-west road that has the stop signs. And what we've noticed before, just kind of looking at the numbers, looking at the aerials, is you really have this kind of 3-lane section coming on the west side of the intersection that transitions into our downtown collector cross section with our angled parking. So anyone going across the intersection, when you stop at either of those approaches, you're kind of making this angled movement to try and keep going straight. For that reason, we always thought that the east-west stop control was most appropriate, and to keep Pine as north-south without stop signs. We've been aware of the sight distance issues. We've got that building right there on the corner. We've got a bush. The thing that's a little trickier is the parking. It depends on what cars are parked where, how big those cars are. Is it a Sprinter van? Is it a RV? Is it just a passenger car? So there's a lot of things that kind of vary within this area. But when I look at the numbers don't say there's a problem here or there's even an issue here. The numbers that I'm looking at basically say focus everything on the highway. Spend all your time and money on the highway. That's where all your crashes are. That's where all your injuries are. That's where all your congestion is. So looking at this one, you're looking at on the grade scale, it's a level of service B to C. It's kind of right on that boundary. It's working fairly well today with the intersection control we have. Then we look at the crashes. Okay, well, what crash experience do we have? And there was 2 crashes in the most recent 5 years data. And these crashes are all compiled by ODOT. They're geocoded. One crash involved a bug distracting someone, and one crash involved someone hitting a parked car. So nothing to do with the stop signs or the speed. None of the things that I'm being told from Paul are actually issues here, where people don't see the approaching vehicle and are pulling out. And typically, I would expect a lot more crashes, to have some type of problem. So I stood out there for quite a while and watched the intersection to see kind of how things are operating. And one of the things I noticed is differently, different users seem to use this intersection in different ways. It is the alternate route that locals know to get around the congestion on the highway. And so you have people that are trying to get through this quickly. They're trying to speed through this intersection. How quickly can I get through here to make up time and get around the congestion on the highway? Then you have the people that are residents that just want to get home safely, and they're a little more cautious and looking both ways more carefully. So I noticed that there were people that were basically, you're crazy and dumb, if you want to call them that. It's the very aggressive drivers, the pickup trucks that are peeling out and going different ways. And you have a lot of very reasonable people that are leaving the commercial core on Hood and trying to get back to wherever it is they're going. The other thing was a little bit surprising to me is, I have these 2 sets of traffic counts here historically. I didn't pick up any new ones because I was a little bit past Labor Day and I didn't really think it mattered a whole lot. But looking at peak summer counts and then non-peak summer counts and trying to compare those volumes, the only thing that really changes between those 2 seasons is how much traffic is really coming from the north towards the east, kind of the cut through route to get past the highway. That's the only volume that really changes in any substantial degree. All the approaches carry about the same volume of traffic. They're each carrying about 100 to 150 vehicles plus or minus. Summer doesn't matter, non-summer, it's still that same volume. So very balanced intersection. Both roads have the same classification. They're both collectors in this. So looking at this, I'm trying to think, okay, what strategies could we do to address this concern I'm hearing about all these near miss crashes, which I've heard before. And again, I'm looking at my numbers and I'm not seeing these things actually happening. And there's a few things we can do. One, we can start out and we can flip the stop signs. If the volumes are higher on one direction, we usually want to keep that higher volume movement uncontrolled and stop the minor. In this case, they're all balanced. A little bit of a shift, in fact, between the summer and the non-summer about which is higher, but they're all virtually the same. So we could look at changing the stop signs. And when I ran those numbers on paper, it works just a little bit better. You save like a second of delay for all at the intersection. But it wouldn't solve any problems. If we were to stop Pine, I think parking in the buildings would just affect the approaches differently, but it wouldn't solve any of the concerns or problems that we're having. Certainly wouldn't address the speeds and those types of differential issues that we're seeing either. The other thing we can do is we can look at, okay, well, maybe this has to do a little bit with having a 3-lane approach on one side. Maybe we can narrow that down to 2 and pull that through lane farther away from the building, improve sight lines. But then you look at the on-street parking and it doesn't really matter. If the parking's being used, you're still going to have the same sight line constraints. And when you start looking at, okay, can we remove on-street parking? Can we switch stop signs? Can we get rid of lanes? All of it ends up being just a small Band-Aid on the issue. None of it really seems to move the needle much. None of it would seem to really solve anything. So the next thing I looked at, which is, one of what the request was really for is, okay, well, what if we made it the all-way stop? So for an all-way stop, there's a few different warrants, in the manual and uniform traffic control devices. There's these warrants that say, if you don't meet these criteria, don't make it an all-way stop because you're going to make it more dangerous. People won't stop and you'll actually end up with more crashes and higher delays. And so an all-around poorer performance of the intersection. So one of the criteria is, based on how much conflicting traffic volumes. We're nowhere near that. We're not even all that close to that threshold at all. Another criteria is saying, okay, well, if we have plans to signalize the intersection, we can make it an always stop as an interim treatment, get that on the ground now while we wait for those signal poles to be ordered, delivered, installed and all that. But we don't plan on ever signalizing this intersection. The other thing is if there's a crash pattern at the intersection, if there's 5 or more crashes in a year, that could be solved by changing this to always stop. Well, we've got 2 total in 5 years, neither of which could be solved, so we don't meet that criteria. And then there's some little more fuzzy criteria. One says sightline issues as a reason, and you see that a lot when you go somewhere on steep hills where you just can't see and it's an always stop. That's the reason you do that in that location. Here you can still see. Again, it depends on the parking and how far forward you're willing to pull your car after you stop behind the crosswalk. And then there's some other criteria about balanced volumes, equivalent classification of streets. And looking at the always stop, I think it does a few things. Some of the things it's supposed to do, which is, operates more safely because everyone comes to a stop. I forgot to mention, we're seeing 51 in summer an hour going through this intersection. It's almost 1 pedestrian crossing that road almost every minute. And I'm sure it's higher at certain events and times than other times. And I'm looking at a weekday evening peak hour, but my God, I bet during the lunch hour, I bet on weekends, I bet that's twice that number. So, looking at this always stop, I think there's a lot of benefits. If the traffic wants to use Hood to bypass the highway, they're going to have to stop, yield to pedestrians, yield to cars before they make that left turn. It's a good way to be introduced to that commercial corridor where we already don't want them speeding through with the angled parking and the streetscape and everything else that we have. I think the pedestrian experience is going to be a lot better. As I was trying to cross the intersection to go stand on each corner, it's a little, unnerving to stand there and not be sure if someone can see you very clearly. So I think that issue gets solved quite well. In terms of delay, again, it doesn't even move the needle. By making everybody stop, it's almost the same identical delay. Obviously, if you're on Pine where you didn't have to stop before, yeah, it adds a little bit more delay, but we're looking at 1 vehicle queues here, maybe 2 vehicle queues at most. Even when those schools are being let out, there's not that much traffic going through here at a given period. So from all those different aspects, it seems like the always stop control is the best solution, with the caveat that what makes always stop control not work well and not work safely is when you have multi-lane approaches. When you're parked next to someone and you can't see the pedestrians that are trying to cross in front of their vehicle, or if there's multiple vehicles on an approach, you're trying to figure out who got there first, right? So my other recommendation is on that eastbound approach that we get rid of that center left turn lane. Now, we don't have to get rid of it permanently. We can basically stripe it, put some tubular markers, make it not usable, but keep every one of these approaches as a single lane approach to make it as simple as possible. And with the volumes we have, it's going to work really well as an always stop. So that's really the recommendation. It's to put the stop signs on all 4 approaches. It's to get rid of that eastbound left turn lane. We'll have to change the crosswalks because Paul has perfectly had them install the kind of the piano keys where you don't stop and the parallel lines where you do stop. So we're gonna have to make all those the parallel line stop bars. We can add the supplemental stop signs. We can put the LED borders. We can put the orange flags up, if we need to try and let people know that there is a change. That transition period is usually a little bit tough. But that's really the recommendation of the report. So happy to answer questions and further discuss.
I use that intersection a lot, and I was one of the people on the survey that said, we need to do something about that intersection. Where I have the most trouble is not the kinds of things you're talking about. Where I have the most trouble is when everything looks appropriate for me to be able to do what I want to do. And then when I'm into a turn, somebody pulls out of the gas station or CNC. And I don't know that they're going to pull out. And all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore. I go through the alley behind the quilt shop and whatever quite a bit because I'm trying to do everything on one side of the highway
Right.
as opposed to the other. Well, when you pull out of that alley, if there's people parked there, you have to get way, way out. And you can look and see before you pull out, everybody coming from every direction, and it's not a problem until somebody pulls out of the gas station or CNC. And then all of a sudden you have to slam on your brakes and everybody goes crazy. So that actually is more of a bottleneck than the sight lines on the actual highways, is those driveways. Now, if the access to CNC was off from Hood as opposed to Pine, I think that that would significantly improve. But it'd have to be far enough away from Pine, of course, to really make a difference. But I think that that access point there is really dangerous. I've just slammed on my brakes, I don't know how many times to avoid something happening there. And I think we're lucky that everybody's going slow enough that all the close calls don't end up in being accidents. And I think it relates to our roundabout situation here. That was not an accident-prone situation there.
Yep.
Because everybody avoided it and everybody went really slow because they knew it was so dangerous. Well, that's what this intersection is. Everybody goes really slow, creeps out, makes sure, double checks before they go because it's so dangerous.
Well, it's interesting you talking about the access points. And when I'm looking at an intersection control, Paul and I have, we don't have that same authority to say, we're gonna come in and close your driveway. They're not under land use. We typically, once they're approved and they've invested the money in those driveways, they're basically granted those driveways. So that wasn't something I looked at or considered.
Yeah, because having those two access driveways within a short block when people turning south onto Pine, the people turning south do not know anybody's going to be there
Right.
either.
Right.
And so they come barreling around there and then, it's another, and the difference in the height, I have a very low car. And if there's very, very high height, then we have a completely different sight capabilities there.
Yeah.
But I see that as, but we can't really impact where their driveways are, huh?
Are there any accidents right there?
None at all.
I think going back when we did the one on Larch, we added that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? We had a stop sign and that was another notoriously bad intersection because of parking on it. And I think when trying to remember what the traffic study said on that, I think there was like 3 accidents or something like that over a couple year period of time. So it didn't show that is, and I think that's partly because of the city mandate of 20 miles an hour that people are able not to do that. But I think it's, there's 3 driveways, Andrea. There's 2 at the gas station and then there's 1 at CNC. So that it does make that whole area just an accident waiting to happen, really. So, but I think the stop signs will help. At least people see. the
People
stop
will be
signs.
going slower and have more of an opportunity to actually look.
Was there a speed limit sign posted in that block?
There's a 20-mile-an-hour one facing westbound on Hood, just outside the intersection. I want to say maybe 150 feet to the west of Pine. I didn't see any others, but I didn't walk too far to the east. Oh, there is one on Pine, but it's further into the residential as well.
I think it's down next to Jefferson. Or
I think it is.
No, because I'm wondering, because I see that, what I see at that intersection is people, like I said, people coming into town, the first stop, they're gonna take that right. And they've been used to driving at 65 miles an hour and they're coming in hot. And then they come down that section of Pine Street. I think that's part of the
Yeah.
problem too.
I think having it be an all-way stop and having that stop sign be visible as soon as you turn from the highway will help. I mean, you're not gonna accelerate if now I've got to, in a block, I've got to come to a complete stop again.
Do you, where the 3 driveways are, if you turn south onto Pine and you're going slowly to the stop sign and there's 3 driveways on your right with people trying to get out, if there's any backup at all, they're gonna have trouble getting out of their driveways.
Yeah.
Paul, remind me again, when they were looking at the space age redevelopment, didn't we consolidate those into, I think, 2 locations instead of 3?
We consolidated them into one location.
Okay.
So we had it fixed.
Yeah,
We were there.
it was on Hood, was it? It was on Hood, wasn't it?
No, no, Space Age, when they came in for redevelopment.
Yeah.
We were closing 2 of those accesses.
Oh, the front
They
two
were not
ones,
going
yeah.
on to Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all down to 1.
Unintended consequences.
Yes.
Um,
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so I can echo what you said about pedestrian close calls, especially as you're trying to cross Pine. Combination of if there's parked vehicles on the street, you have to basically walk out into the street for north-south traffic to see you. And then there's also if there's been a queue, drivers at stop signs are like impatient and they just want to go. And so all of a sudden they're moving and have to throw on their brakes because there's pedestrians in there. So I think from a pedestrian perspective, having the 4-way all-way stop would be really good. One of the other things I was thinking about is we've got the elementary school that just opened, and then a whole bunch of new development on the west side on 242. So I think right now you were saying that we've got that balance of directions, but I think the east-west is gonna go up significantly in the not too distant future. And make that more, just have a lot more movement, going on.
I agree. I
Yeah,
think
definitely.
that particularly like if you're coming eastbound, that's where you can get impatient is trying to figure out what people are doing on Pine and then getting ready to go and not necessarily seeing the peds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a good recommendation.
And, just from it is the entry point into the downtown corridor, and in some ways, like, my mental picture is it starts before that intersection on the west side, because you've got Blazing Saddles, you've got Brunchies there now. There's other businesses that are on the western side of that intersection, so it makes sense to me of like slowing everything down because there's just more people out and about in that area.
I think it's another good reason not to just start striking out parking, saying we're gonna improve sight lines, cut down all the bushes, you can't park anywhere here. I mean, we destroy those businesses if we were to do that.
I think that'd be bad to eliminate parking in that spot. Even though
They
it's,
clearly need it.
and it doesn't always get filled up, but when it gets filled up, it's needed.
Yeah, is there something that we could do about the bushes to improve? Because you're not gonna change the building, right? Building's there, but if there,
When you change the sidewalks, will that impact some of the bushes or?
We
Wondering,
got 2 bushes we're talking about.
Yeah.
They're not that big.
Are those,
I've never heard of, I've never heard of a complaint
Okay.
about not being able to see. I mean, they're kind of ugly to me, but they're owned and maintained by the adjacent business, so I wouldn't have a problem chopping them down.
If they're,
No, they're in your right of way.
They are, and we'd like to, with frontage improvements that were put in by that business, we'd like to respect that.
yeah, it's those 2 evergreen plants on the southwest corner.
I mean, they're hip high, it's
yeah.
definitely.
they trim them.
I feel like the vehicles are the bigger
Mm-hmm.
issue.
And we hashed out the first parking space right around the corner there to help, and that did help. But I mean, the thing that's always frustrated me with this intersection as a driver is people in Pine like to stop
Yeah.
without a stop sign.
Oh, and just
So
like,
I'm like,
yeah.
why not just put a stop sign?
they do.
Like literally.
Yeah.
And then, of
You don't
course,
know what they're gonna do.
and I'm there honking behind them. What are you doing? And I'm the one that wants to stop.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Well,
so.
because you get almost.
Board members hearing, I did have to leave.
Hmm.
He can't hear.
So, is the board in agreement that the stop sign should be put there?
See if he has any.
Oh, yeah, Dane, what are your thoughts on, the stop signs?
Can you hear me? Can't hear me.
Yes, we can, we can.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Yeah, so I came into this meeting after reading the pre-read and I was thinking, man, are we trying to solve something that doesn't really exist and it's just a feeling that everybody has at that. But I don't know, and listening to everybody talk and some of these other issues, I mean, it definitely seems like the four-way stop would address I think everything that I've heard presented as far as issues that people have seen, including the one where people on Pine Street want to stop there. And so I guess I'm thinking it might be worthwhile, and just the fact that it removes this from an issue that just keeps coming up every year or every other year, where we're like, oh, we have to study this again because people are concerned about it. This might just solve that concern. So I guess I've been won over that this might be worth the investment. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a huge investment. It seems like just putting in those stop signs might be all that's necessary to make everybody feel safer.
Nice. Thanks, Dane, for showing us your sanity.
Well, I think we shouldn't allow people to park between the chocolate store and the alley. I hate, it seems like that they always park kind of out in the road. So when I'm coming down Pine to Cascade and I'm looking ahead to see whether there's any queue,
That's,
I can never tell whether they're gonna turn right or whether they're actually
Yeah.
parked there.
that's
Yeah.
Jeanette's GMC that's parked right there. She owns the chocolate shop.
Yeah.
And it's always parked there. So it's funny. Before we do, Paul, what is the dollar figure to, put in 2 stop signs, flashing lights, reline that? Did you guys put an estimate together for that?
You got advanced signage, you have stop stencils, you got new crosswalk markings. I mean, all in, you're about 20,000.
20,000?
And I would be looking to have Joe and Eric provide a striping design for this, since we are gonna be changing lane configurations. So it could be a little bit north of that, depending on, is it better to do new curbing on that island? Or can we use tubular markers? I try to stay away from tubular markers because they tend to end up in the landscaping pretty quick. So it could be a little bit more infrastructure intense, but we have dollars set for safety work just like this in the budget.
So, okay, that's good.
It's something that I would start this fall and try to get in this fall, depending on sign availability, contractor availability, weather, that type of thing. We'd have to just kind of roll with the weather punches.
Yeah.
As they come.
Do you need to run that by council, or is that something you can do within your own budget?
It's something that we can do with the heads up to council.
Yeah.
We do that first, and if there was concern, then we would go into it a little bit deeper with them.
All right.
So that does raise a good question of what is this competing with for your safety budget?
Always stop at Fur and Main. Is that right, Joe? Is it Fur and Main or Elm and Main? I think it's Fur and Main.
I think it's fur.
That was the next one we were gonna look at.
That's another one where you have to pull clear out
Yeah.
onto the highway to see if anybody's coming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Farmer's market's a disaster. When the barn's full, it's really tough.
Yeah, we should close the street.
That is an interesting question though, because that is so busy, that intersection.
Again, not a lot of crash data there.
You know?
No, it's because everybody's going so slow. It's the near miss.
But still, I mean,
data.
yeah, still, I would think you would have grinders.
But is it the everybody quits so slow, or we stop actually makes it more dangerous? So slow. Is that what you were saying about putting in a forward stop? Actually might increase
They,
because you stop on slow.
they increase when people disregard them. When every time you go through, there's no one coming from the other approaches. People tend to roll through them, keep going, drive more aggressively. And that's when you have the issue. I don't see that being the case here because you have those balanced flows.
Would First Street be in the same budget number as
No, it'd be less.
less?
And do you have budget to do both? And if not, when was that budget renewed so that you could get them both in?
No, we wouldn't have dollars to do both. It'd be one or the other, and it would be due July 1, 2025.
Okay.
The other thing that we would do when we had a striping design is run this by fire and life safety to make sure that they were okay with it.
On the traffic survey that we did Fur and Main come up as often as Pine and Hood?
I have not seen the results of the latest
Okay.
survey, so I don't know.
I think that might be good to find out, like, and what the recommendation would be for the Main and Fur one, as well as this. Those are tough questions about what to put
What the priorities
the
are.
immediate dollars to. And then I was thinking about the discussion on Barkley and trying to pull together enough dollars to do some of those smaller safety improvements in addition to the bigger capital project to the east. Cause I remember us talking about Pine and Barkley and whether or not that would be a good location to permanently have it be a four-way.
Definitely not on the alternate route.
You don't think so?
We don't want to stop the alternate route.
Cause you have the neighborhood coming across and we were talking about how to do.
We could do enhanced pedestrian crossings, but we don't want to stop that alternate route. That's the whole reason why we're changing the stop control down at Locust and Bark.
And with Locust and Barkley, do we have budget to make that adjustment, or is that part of the budget for the roundabout? For signage on, actually, I'm sorry, coming out of the roundabout on Locust, you're gonna put a sign up there, correct?
The driver feedback sign?
Yeah,
That's the plan, yeah.
okay, all right. So I think that, one of the things we should make sure we get in, maybe you should run some of your budget items next year by us, Paul, and say, what's your thoughts on this? Maybe like, because if we put Fur and Main on it, I think that would be, I think we'd like to look at that. That would be something we'd want to consider. But if there's other items that you go, do we do this or this, this or this? And that might be something that you can run by us to get some support on.
Sure.
All right, so back to the board. Can we get a vote to move forward with this from the board? Okay,
A vote to move forward or a vote to just, do we like the idea? And then it sounds like the move forward might be which one first?
okay, so I think, let me rephrase that, okay? I'll put a motion on the floor that we move to have the four-way stops put at Pine and Hood this year. That's my motion. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
And then discussion.
Discussion?
So that's for yes, doing this before we hear about the other one.
Well, and so can I add something to that? So we could sit and discuss this for a while and we could
Yeah.
do some more studies. But we have crash data that says neither of them is super dangerous. So then does it matter if we can do both of them within 2 years? Does it matter which one we do first?
Right.
Does it matter that much? I guess I'm saying.
And I can add in that I have personally not heard a complaint about fur and mane. We recognized it, Joe brought it up in just traffic counts that we were seeing on that side of town as a priority. I hear about this all the time,
The other one.
the hood and pine, yep.
Well, that's good to know.
So I guess priority community-wise, it sounds like hood and pine to me, from what I hear, and from what people hear inside City Hall, that would be the priority between the two.
And Paul, just to add to that too, fur and Maine, I mean, since we don't have to remove a lane, I guess from ballpark estimate, I'm thinking that's probably more in the $5,000 to $10,000 range with the striping, signing changes.
Yes, yes, yep.
That's cool.
We have a second on the motion?
So you had a
Yep,
second.
we do. Let's go to
Yes.
vote. Thanks, Dane. Let's go to vote. John? Laura? Rachel?
Yes.
But you don't? I vote yes. Zane? Yes?
Yes, Dean.
The board recommends that we move forward with that poll.
Okay.
Final,
You could take out that center lane, you could make them line up a little more, but it's
It's still
just a Band-Aid.
Is there any other business, Paul, that you want to discuss today?
I got some updates.
Cool.
great.
So our East Portal Mobility Hub Phase 1 project is out to bid.
Yeah.
Bids are due on September 25th. We're getting a lot of interest in that project. We're hoping bids are coming back really competitive. We're hearing out on the street that work is lightening up in Central Oregon, especially with ODOT contracted work. So looking forward to bids coming in on that. We got Barclay Phase 1 improvements that are going to be out to bid in early October. That'll be a winter and spring construction time, complete by June 30th. And then McKinney Butte Phase 1 pedestrian improvements is done. Hopefully you guys have been out there.
Nice.
The speed humps are awesome.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. And very well used. We've been observing the school traffic for the last week. And I counted over 100 kids walking to school out there.
Nice.
So it's huge. I mean, that's 100 trips off of our system
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
And they're all using those crossing treatments. So
Awesome.
a great project. We're looking to have Phase 2 out to bid next Tuesday. And that will be a winter, spring construction, obviously due to asphalt plants shutting down. And for the third raised crossing over by McKinsey Meadows, that requires a full road closure and we won't be able to do that until spring break. So that'll be a spring project. Our well 1 improvements, we're at 90% design. Just starting to wrap that up. That'll go out to bid this fall and that'll be a winter, spring construction. Our west side pump station is moving right along. We're at 60% design. We'll be completing the design by December 31st. And then we'll be going out to bid with a spring, summer, fall 2025 construction time. Well 3 improvements, we're at 30% design. That's for a new VFD and backup power at that station. That'll be a winter, spring 2025 construction. We started the Lazy Z pivot design. CEC is also designing the power supply to come in for the pivot head. So that'll be winter, spring to be online for next year's effluent disposal season.
Who's doing that?
The pivot design, Eric Huffman. He's working with the rep for the Valley Pivots is who he's working with. We applied for a $250,000 small city allotment grant to help shore up the funding for the Barclay improvements. We thought it was a great project, not only safety project, but just traffic mobility through the alternate route. We also applied for a 750,000, is that right? CRP grant for Elm Street, right around there.
Right around that.
Yep. We'll hear about that later on this fall, early winter. And we were just encouraged by ODOT to apply for funding for the Elm Street path. They had additional funding in a grant cycle, previous grant cycle. So our fingers are crossed on that.
Is that Safe Routes?
Nope, it's Climate Reduction Program.
Oh.
And so that would turn that project into an ODOT project, which extends time, adds a whole lever, a lot of layers of complexity to the project.
Mhm.
But if we can reduce our out of pocket from 350,000 down to 75,000, that is worth it. We received a $50,000 Oregon Park and Rec planning grant to master plan the Northwest Park.
Not yet.
Sorry, we received preliminary thumbs up that we made the list.
We're on the final list.
Thank you.
So knock on wood, it's a knock on
Yeah,
wood.
That this goes in front of the commission.
On the 18th.
Yeah, so at that point, we've never seen them mess with that list, but that T's gotta be crossed.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we would start that work, as soon as we had the IGA signed, we would go out for a RFP for planning services. That's gonna be really a community-based planning project.
Cool.
Really, I mean, we got 2.8 acres. Community, what would you like to do with it?
Mhm.
Really start, from ground zero to come up with it.
Big old ball.
And then now we got Hood and Pine intersection improvements. So just add to the list.
That's right, 4 wins.
That is quite the list. I'm impressed with you getting that much work done.
And Jackson, did you have anything? I keep saying Jackson applies for these grants.
With a lot of help from Paul and other eyes, checking for spelling and everything. No, you took my announcement for the Northwest Park grant.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Kudos to Jackson.
So there'll be a bridge from the park over to the mobility hub?
A bridge? No, not quite. There will be an enhanced pedestrian crossing.
I want a bridge, come on.
Mm.
They're gonna get a bridge in Bend
Yeah.
over the railroad tracks. We could
Yeah.
have a,
Only 25 million.
Yeah.
It plays with a different set of
Yeah.
zeros.
absolutely.
Great.
Paul, there's, someone wants to speak at
I need to go pick you up at the station.
the undercross. Are they doing one up the highway at Black Butte or something like that, or?
So I met with Jeremy, and he came to council, with Central Oregon Land Watch, and he is a project manager on a project to build 4 overcrossings between Black Butte and essentially Indian Ford.
4?
4. And 2 of them are within a half mile of each other.
I thought some of them were further up, like more towards Settle. So they're all between.
Actually, I should say Subtle Lake to Indian Ford.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And I met with him and told him about our Lazy Z wetlands project and how ODOT had expressed concern about wildlife crossing in that area. We have concern about that too. We would like to address that. We're gonna need help with that because those bridges are very, very expensive. Obviously out of our funding realm of possibilities, so. But he wasn't really interested in looking at that now. He's really focused on, they all are focused on those 4 hot spots west of town, which Makes sense.
Because that's where the elk migration goes right through there. right?
Elk and mule deer.
Mule deer,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the article in the paper, an astronomical number of
Oh, yeah.
elk, deer and every,
Big
crashes are in that area. It's just amazing
Mhm.
how much happens there. But it's very, very expensive, but it's not a done deal.
Well, it's a lot of money to find.
A lot of money. Right.
So I have a
But it's also very expensive, cost of emergency response, vehicle damage, human life.
Yeah.
It, like, 350 to like over 500 collisions a year
It's crazy.
right now. Like, it's so many.
And he said there's been a 90% reduction, is that right?
In Sun
In
River.
in the Highway 97 corridor,
Mhm.
Where they've done it before, yeah.
which is huge.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah, just, who's gonna go down and teach them where to go? I mean, that's the hard part.
Mhm. Fill signs for them.
Yeah, streets along the path.
There's people in Pine Meadow Village that put out their cantaloupe rinds. I'm sure we can get them to help.
Yep.
I had not related to that question. I was wondering how, so you had the new rates adopted for water and sewer and how that's going and what kind of comments you had.
Very little feedback, either positive or negative.
And they've all gone out. All the bills have gone.
Yes.
So we haven't heard from the athletic club.
No,
I just can't imagine how the
Interesting.
water rates are.
and I'm speaking for Joe. Joe's not here. It's possible that he could have heard from Tate, but I have not.
Yeah, and yeah, I went when I got mine, but I mean, I knew it was coming. so-
Yeah. And I'm surprised that the PMV board hasn't said anything on that either, because I think theirs went up like
Yeah,
$5,000.
I'm sure. Yeah, you have the fire people come in and tell you you're doing it all wrong, and then you have your water bill go up, and I mean, something should be changing our attitude.
Mentality on that.
But everybody loves the green grass. I do too.
All the baseball's infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, we are gonna be reducing our green grass with the 4 islands on Hood Avenue between Pine and 242.
Whose idea
Thank
was
you.
it to put grass in there anyway?
Before my time, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know there was before your
Oh,
time.
God. And then they created Foot Sisters and Paul was here.
And Paul was- Okay,
Oh, but not quite.
yeah. No, that was back in the day when that wasn't even a consideration.
Right,
Oh, well, that's
yeah.
gonna take more water, huh?
Our guys are, that have to maintain that and mow that, or they can't wait until it's gone.
Right, I can understand that.
Yeah, I can't do.
Nice, nice.
Any other comments, board members?
Just real quick for
Yeah.
next meeting in October. Bill had mentioned a field trip. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that.
So, and I was gonna make that announcement too, but I won't be here on the night. But, what I would recommend that we do is, it's been this promise, I've been on the board since it started, and Paul says, we're gonna get you out and show you all the sites. We've never been out to see all the sites. But I think it would be a great way for everybody to get out, to see the pump stations, wastewater treatment plants, the reservoir that we're gonna do, where some of our important lift stations are in town. I think I talked to John about that already, and he was in agreement. So if you guys want to do that,
More than an hour.
yeah, probably take 90 minutes. we could start-
Divide and conquer too.
Yeah.
And focus maybe water one trip and then
Yep.
wastewater another trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause we'd want to get out and, kick the tires a little bit.
Yeah, I want to show you, I want to start with, personally, it's up to you guys what you want to do. The reservoir, the Edgerton Road line, well 5, kind of that west end where we're going to be spending a lot of money in the next few years.
Great.
Critical infrastructure, so.
We're gonna be losing light.
I know.
If this is something the board wants to do, I can look into how we can do this while avoiding any kind of public meeting violations, because these are public meetings, the public needs to have access to them. Maybe we announce where we're going to be, and the public can be there at those times, or maybe we split the board up into groups, so we avoid a quorum.
Mhm.
So that's something I can look into, especially if we're losing daylight, it doesn't really make sense to have
All of them.
that field trip at this time in November when it starts.
Right.
Or what about a Saturday?
Or
Or a
Or
Sunday?
like a Friday afternoon, if that works for folks, or.
Also throw out there, I think we do 4:30 because of my kids in previous years. I don't have that right now. I just pick them up Tuesdays. If we want to do earlier.
Oh,
It's okay with me now.
I'll have to consult my calendar.
Yeah, I know, I
I'm like,
But yes, but it
Fire.
sounds like a great
Yeah.
idea, so I guess just planning it far enough in advance.
October's a great month.
Yeah.
Still got pretty good weather.
Yep.
so.
Yeah.
Good done.
hopefully after smoke season.
Oh my goodness, hopefully rain tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Pours, not just
Yeah.
dribbles.
Mm.
Any other board member comments? I move to adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Joe, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, I basically.
John,
said
I
we're a
got
bunch of
something.